Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Here's Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. Antigua and Barbuda proud of its position on the Human Development Report. This story takes the lead in our 1011th edition of Caribbean Perspective for Monday 21st December 2020. Details when we return. Welcome back. Antigua and Barbuda remains among high human development countries in the latest Human Development Report. The report, which was published last week, presents the 2019 Human Development Index, or HDI, for 189 countries and UN-recognized territories. ABS's Jamie J. Roger reports on Antigua and Barbuda's progress since it was first assessed in 2005.
The 2020 report is titled The Next Frontier, Human Development and the Anthropocene. The report argues as people and the planet enter an entirely new geological epoch, the Anthropocene, or the Age of Humans, it is time for all countries to redesign their paths to progress. It says this can only be done by fully accounting for the dangerous pressures humans put on the planet and dismantle the gross imbalances of power and opportunity that prevent change. Antigua and Barbuda's Human Development Index, or HDI, value for 2019 is 0.778, which put the country in the high human development category. It's positioned at 78 out of 189 countries and territories. Between 2005 and 2019, the country's HDI value increased from 0.764 to 0.778, an increase of 1.8%. According to the report, between 1990 and 2019, Antigua and Barbuda's life expectancy at birth increased by 5.5 years. It's now at 77 years. Mean years of schooling increased by 2.3 years, and expected years of schooling decreased by 0.5 years. On the financial side, this country's gross national income per capita has increased by about 57.9% between 1990 and 2019. The report notes Antigua and Barbuda's 2019 HDI is above the average of 0.753 for countries in the high human development group. It's also above the average of 0.766 for countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. The authors say it is misleading to compare values and rankings with those of previously published reports because of revisions and updates of the underlying data and adjustments to goalposts. Jamie J. Roche, ABS News.
Over in St. Lucia, former Senator Everestus John Marie says Prime Minister Alan Chasteny should apologize to the public for his election campaign allegations that the former SLP government was profiting from the hidden tax on fuel. Chasteny, who laid the report in Parliament on Tuesday, acknowledged that the money was actually going to fuel importers. Colby DeVoe of HTS News Force reports.
Former president of the St. Lucia Petroleum Dealers Association, Everestus Jamari, says Prime Minister Alan Chasteny owes the nation an apology over his 2016 election campaign rhetoric on gas prices. Between 2014 and 2016, Chasteny, as the leader of the United Workers' Party, alleged that the St. Lucia Labour Party administration, led by Dr. Kenny Anthony, was benefiting from a hidden tax on the sale of each gallon of fuel. It is a claim which was emphatically denied by officials who pointed to the open-source calculation method for the fuel pass-through mechanism. Now, Chasteny, who is the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, in a presentation of a report to Parliament this week, conceded that the perceived gains were actually going to fuel importers. An astounded general manager of Jamari and Sons is calling on the Prime Minister to fess up for the erroneous claims.
And we kept saying that, but he insisted that that money was going to the government, and went as far as to quantify it as $6.80 or $6.90 per gallon. And I mean, it is shocking that he kept doing that for the time he did that. And today, he's in the Parliament explaining the same thing we did explain then, and admitting that this money has been going to the importers and not the government. And, I think he owes the nation an apology why he did what he did at the time he did. Because he was cautioned against doing it, and he persisted. So now he has come to realization, that it is not the case that government was getting $6.80 per gallon, and that the fact that it was not true. And I kept saying, the government cannot have a hidden tax. It's a very transparent thing. There's a statutory instrument that states what the excise tax is on every gallon of fuel. I don't know how could you hide that. Besides, government doesn't handle the product.
Jamari, who views the actions on the 2016 election campaign trail as disingenuous and unconscionable, is not sold on the Prime Minister's announcement of a planned study to review the fuel price regime to provide more savings for the state and St. Lucians.
Yesterday I heard him and actually explaining it, and he's doing it, but he's saying the right things now as a premise or pretext to do something else. And I think the pretext is to bring in a third operator into the market. And of course, he's not telling the truth about the situation, but in so doing, he's unraveling some of the foolishness he was in at the time. So I really believe he owes the public an apology for having deceived them for the length of time he did. And this idea of a study, I just don't take that seriously anymore.
The former senator's stock in trade is the gas station business. While Jamari might see some merit in an evaluation of the framework used by the fuel importers, he thinks this can be best achieved at a sub-regional level. He scoffs at any notion of revamping the current arrangement, arguing that a revision of the regulatory period of adjustment from 3 months to 3 weeks has helped curtail the variance in price fluctuations.
If you want to have a study as to how those prices are computed by Sol and Rubis, that's another study. But the system is the same, the prices are the same for all the territories within the region, except, of course, for changes due to freight prices. But the system is the same. So if you want to do anything, it probably has to best be done on an OECS level to do this issue. But there's nothing wrong with the fuel pass-through mechanism, which has been recommended by the ECCB and has been in operation in most of the islands. So, I mean, this idea that you need to change the system, there's nothing wrong with the system. We have dealt with the anomaly that has been created as a consequence of having a very long revision period of 3 months. We have reduced it to 3 and have dealt with that issue. So there's nothing wrong. To suggest that there's something inadequate about the system, I think it's misleading.
Thousands of St. Lucians, led by UWP leader Alan Chasney, took to the streets on January 28, 2015, in a massive demonstration billed as the, quote, "Enough is Enough," unquote, Orange March, against the rising cost of living, high fuel prices, and the value-added tax, among other grievances. Chasney, who railed against the then 3-month fuel price adjustment period, insisted that the SLP government was being less than forthright about what he claimed was a hidden tax on petroleum products. Colby DeVoe, HTS News Force.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
A final and binding ruling was handed down on Friday last by the International Court of Justice on the Guyana-Venezuela border controversy. Venezuela did not participate, but according to the ruling of the court, that country is welcome to join at any time. Here is more from HGP's Travis Chase.
Seen as a victory for all of Guyana, the International Court of Justice on Friday ruled that it would hear Guyana's case on the validity of the 1899 Arbitral Tribunal Award case brought by Guyana against Venezuela. The decision, which was handed down by a majority of 12 votes to 4, was that the court has jurisdiction to entertain the application. President of the World Court, Abdul Kwari Yusuf, read the court's decision.
The court, therefore, concludes that Guyana's claims concerning the validity of the 1899 award about the frontier between British Guyana and Venezuela and the related question of the definitive settlement of the land boundary dispute between Guyana and Venezuela fall within the subject matter of the controversy that the parties agreed to settle through the mechanism set out in Articles 1 to 4 of the Geneva Agreement, in particular Article 4, Paragraph 2 thereof, and that as a consequence, the court has jurisdiction, ratione materiae, to entertain these claims.
However, in order for the boundary controversy to be settled, the validity of the 1899 award must first be settled, the president of the ICJ ruled.
Indeed, it would not be possible to resolve definitively the boundary dispute between the parties without first deciding on the validity of the 1899 award about the frontier between British Guyana and Venezuela.
Venezuela, since the 19th century, when Guyana was still a British colony, has laid claim to the vast mineral-rich area west of the Essequibo River, which accounts for about 40% of Guyana's territory. An international tribunal ruled in 1899 that the area formed part of Guyana, which at the time was a British colony. Venezuela has never accepted the ruling, arguing it was one-sided. Venezuela claims the Essequibo region on the grounds that the 1899 award was null and void. The court on Friday said the judgment on jurisdiction is final and binding.
The court, 1, by 12 votes to 4, finds that it has jurisdiction to entertain the application filed by the Cooperative Republic of Guyana on 29 March 2018, insofar as it concerns the validity of the arbitral award of 3 October 1899 and the related question of the definitive settlement of the land boundary dispute between the Cooperative Republic of Guyana and the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela.
Guyana, on the 29th of March 2018, submitted its application to the International Court of Justice, requesting the court to confirm the legal validity and binding effect of the 1899 arbitral award regarding the boundary between Guyana and Venezuela. That application followed the decision of the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres in choosing the ICJ as the next means of resolving the controversy that arose as a result of the Venezuela contention that the arbitral award of 1899 about the frontier between British Guyana and Venezuela was null and void. Travis Chase, HGP Nightly News.
On the heels of the criticism from the Organization of American States and its Secretary General Luis Almagro, stemming from the shipwreck which left at least 25 Venezuelans dead, Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley says the Twin Island Republic has been made an enemy of the OAS for its principled positions. Ovashitawari Rupnarayan of TV6 News reports.
Luis Almagro, Secretary General of the OAS, has taken an open and public position on Venezuela. Back in 2017, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley was among the first to point out Mr. Almagro's position compromised the OAS's neutrality and means the organization can no longer be a body to mediate the Venezuela situation.
Because Trinidad and Tobago was the first country to call for the resignation of the head of the OAS for what I described there. Instead of that happening, somehow by other initiatives, who has more corn, feed more fowl, and Almagro's contract was renewed 1 year ahead of schedule. A year before the contract expired, machinations took place.
That decision cost TNT greatly.
And of course, Trinidad and Tobago, having not gone down a certain road that you were encouraged to go, they made an enemy of us.
After Venezuela withdrew from the OAS, the Prime Minister says another representative was replaced at Venezuela's seat.
Trinidad and Tobago's position on that is very clear, that the OAS body is not properly constituted by simply placing a person there at somebody else's behest and put resolutions there and ask us to vote on it. Our position has consistently been that we are not voting for any resolution where the Venezuelan representative is not properly seated.
He says TNT will not be withdrawing from the OAS and will continue attending meetings, but reserves its right not to vote.
We got to the point eventually where there was to be regime change in Venezuela by military means. And that is where Trinidad and Tobago, if we had to stand alone, but we didn't, but if we had to stand alone, we must. Because that kind of development in Venezuela would have had serious physical consequences for the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
TNT's position, he says, remains one of non-intervention and non-interference.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.